avoid the collapse into effectively 1984, where you have a big brother watching you at all times and really feeding you what you should see and what you should do.
Blockchains are important to solve some of these issues with bias and censorship and privacy and all these things.
Should we be able to educate, persuade, and kind of empower people? Welcome back to the Rollup.
This is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
All right, welcome to episode 1 of AI Supercycle presented by Near. Today we have the Near CEO, co-founder Illia Polosukhin to talk about the Near vision for AI and really just uncover and unveil this next generation forward-thinking model of AI. Illia, it's great to have you on. It's not your first time, but it is your first time on this new show. So welcome on, man.
Thank you for having me. Excited for this show overall and excited to dive in.
I think we're pretty excited about user-owned AI and some of the things that you have cooking over at Near. And so, we called this show the AI Supercycle. I guess let's just get warmed up here. Are we in an AI Supercycle, Illia?
I mean, I call it AI last cycle because I think everything from now on is going to be done by AI. But I mean, for sure, if we think of kind of broad technologies that have reshaped the world, electricity, cars, internet, AI by its magnitude is probably going to be bigger than those. And so it obviously built on them, but I think kind of bringing intelligence and kind of allowing to program it, to define how it's done, to also leverage it ourselves. I think it will reshape the world in massive ways.
And I think just the spending right now in terms of AI investment is certainly in a super cycle. I think you could argue it is propping up the entire stock market in the U.S. currently.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think we definitely see the infrastructure build out phase, right, which we've seen kind of before with internet. But at the same, I mean, and there is discussions, this is a bubble or not a bubble, but at the end, I think the opportunity that it brings, similarly how, even though there was a lot of investment and potentially bubble that happened in, end of 90s in internet, right? We know now that internet was indeed massive, shift in how we do work, how we consume information, how the world operates. And so, kind of AI is doing the same, but I think on accelerated terms. And so that's why we kind of see, a lot more investment, a lot more kind of hardware being built out because it's very, very energy and kind of compute consuming.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about kind of the power laws at play here now. There's tons of investment. We saw, OpenAI and Oracle did this $300 billion deal recently. Neither, the joke is that neither Oracle has $300 billion to give, and OpenAI doesn't have $300 billion in compute to give. So maybe before we get into some of the nitty gritty around the technicals of what Near is building, when you see some of these massive partnership announcements, but underneath the surface, how are those deals done? What is really going on underneath the surface to allow them to make a deal like this?
Yeah, I think, to draw the line with crypto, right? Crypto thought they invented the partnership game where, you partner and both tokens pump. But, we're definitely not the first at kind of these games. So traditionally, in TradFi, there's a lot of deals which are done on leverage and on effectively loans, and especially when we're talking about this capex heavy work. So Stargate example, right? Stargate example was saying, hey, we're gonna have 500 billion of hardware built, right? 500 billion project of building hardware. Now the thing is, if you wanna purchase for example, I mean, let's use small numbers, $100 million worth of compute, you don't actually need to pay out 100 million from your pocket. You can say, hey, I'm going to put in 20 million from my own pocket, and then I'll go in and borrow 80 more million, right, to buy 100 million worth of compute. And so this is very similar how you do with house, right? You have a 20% down payment, and then you pay out X amount every month for the mortgage. Except here, the compute actually makes money, right? So when you get 100 million worth of compute, you're actually making revenue from that, so you can pay back the loan while also taking some revenue. And so now you just did a 5x leverage effectively, because you effectively put in 20 million of your own money while leveraging up. Now, the people who are playing these games with 500 billion obviously are way better at this, and so their leverage is higher. They're when they announce 500 billion, they effectively split it as an investment over 5 years. So this is already 100 billion a year. And then they also say, well, first year is not going to be 100 billion. We're going to only put 20 billion first year into the ground, right? And then scale up from there. And so the 20 billion, you only then need, 5 billion of actually your money, maybe, or even 4. And so it all kind of goes down to the exact implementation of that becomes a financial engineering problem. And obviously there's really good people there designing this. And now, if we're saying this year it's 4 or 5 billion, well, OpenAI is already making almost 20 billion in revenue this year, right? And so now this is actually a manageable numbers, and given their growth has been such parabolic, and they project that growth as well, they can expect that next year they'll be able to put in more. So it's all kind of, I mean, I think the interesting thing about AI, and where kind of it interestingly overlaps with crypto, is that a lot of AI right now is financial engineering, right? It's all about where to get compute, how to get the best best price for electricity, how to combine it. There's a lot of actual electrical engineering, obviously, and software engineering that comes in, but on the surface, these big numbers are all financial engineering. And where, again, crypto is potentially has a huge role to play, is because we have instruments to do this kind of things. Although I don't think right now crypto has actually the depth of, for example, you can't go in and borrow 20 billion of capital on chain. But I think the opportunity is there to really kind of create new instruments and new assets for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that this deal really just signifies that OpenAI is going for, to be one of the larger companies in the world. I mean, whether public or private, or eventually going from private to public, they're signaling look, this is something that we're basically, our product's going to be used by everyone worldwide, globally. Everyone's going to be subscriber. We're going to reach that level of Google, Apple kind of esque type of capability, which is extremely promising for the entire AI space as a whole. But I think now is a really good time to kind of segue into some of the things that you guys feel from the near perspective is extremely pressing in today's time. So, you being one of the co-creators of the transformer model, have outwardly suggested many times on our show and other shows that the current centralized AI systems are unsustainable and frankly fundamentally broken. You've been a big advocate for user-owned AI, which emphasizes the need for privacy and confidentiality. I think in prompting and data sourcing, in the training of different LLMs, and basically what we're trying to do here is unlock the full potential of AI in a personal and a professional context. And so, broadly, when you're looking at this vision, Illia, we're trying to prevent a future where a single AI can control information. We're trying to create a more peer-to-peer network in the state of, Byzantine fault-tolerant networks like blockchains, but for AI systems. And basically, we're trying to create individual AI agents that can interact directly and autonomously in the system. So there's a lot to kind of overview here, but I would like to just hear it from you for as the first episode of this show to really set the through line for the message that we are going to carry on your behalf as we go and grow this show. Kind of what is this core message that you have to the AI community, to the world, frankly, for how you would like to see the development of these systems go for the better of humanity?
Yeah, I think it's a good segue from saying, hey, we expect AI, and OpenAI is trying to play this role to be this kind of general available technology that everybody in the world uses, right? Again, to draw the parallel with internet, right? 5 billion people are right now connected to internet. That's how they consume information. That's how they connect to each other. That's how they, shop, and kind of entertain themselves and work. And so as AI becomes that as well, it's extremely important that we don't end up in AOL world, right? Where, imagine AOL was the only company that provided internet globally to everyone. And, you want to host a website, you need to go to AOL. You want to search for something, AOL is effectively only option to, see the results, right? That's a very, scary and kind of dystopian world, and very very kind of luckily we haven't ended up in that, right? And kind of the openness of the internet was preserved. And so similarly with kind of how do we ensure this happens with AI? And again, I actually believe AI is a more like world-changing technology than internet even is, because internet is still kind of allows us to go and see the information and kind of decide if we like it or not, if we believe it or not, etc. With AI, what's going to happen, and kind of looking into the future, the AI will effectively be our lens into the world, right? Be that very explicitly, right, where you were wearing the glasses and there's an AR on top, or implicitly where as you read in the news, it's all generated by AI, as then like the messages, kind of all the content, all the consumption, all the decisions that you make, right, they're going to be either done by AI or augmented by AI. And so whoever controls that AI, whichever kind of decisions, and biases were introduced in that AI system, will decide on how people are actually perceive the reality, right? And so I think that's a very kind of scary situation if that is effectively controlled by one company. However good or bad that company is, it's just like that company always will have a singular bias. And so that's where kind of the idea of user-owned AI is not actually like open source or closed source. It's really about AI being yours, not theirs, right? Like how do we make sure that everyone has, right to AI in a way, and make sure that everyone has control and kind of sovereignty over their AI, and kind of avoid the collapse into effectively 1984, where you have a big brother watching you at all times and really feeding you what you should see and what you should do. So that's kind of the fundamental. And I think it's very much born out of kind of crypto values as well. But it's way bigger than, kind of crypto have been trying to do, especially in the past couple of years, right? Where it's been like, hey, this is a new financial system, to really like, hey, this is a new like internet, right? Kind of back to those discussions we've had, in 17, 18, 19, when we were like, hey, we actually want to rebuild internet in a new way. And I think now it's pretty clear that AI is rebuilding internet, right? And going to change how we interact with internet. And we need to make sure that it's built on a kind of the right ways. And so where this kind of goes to blockchain is, I think you can't expect to try, like let's imagine somebody right now says like, hey, we'll do, your AI, but we'll do it as a for-profit company. I think the challenge here is that you're going to end up in a very similar situation as like the existing companies have ended up, because it is very resource intensive. It requires massive amount of capital and financial engineering to really scale it and bring it to the world. And you need to raise capital to do that. You need to effectively do all of those actions. And so if you are doing it in kind of traditional for-profit way, you will end up kind of still owning the control and governance of the system. And so that's where we need a decentralized, right, at the fundamental level system where you can both raise capital in decentralized way and kind of distribute value to the users themselves. You can have people participating. You can have people kind of forking and making their own routes where they need to really kind of create this ecosystem that is building user-owned AI.
I think you make a really important point about AI taking the place of the internet as the lens in which we see the world. Because you can say that for a long time, Google would be kind of your gateway. You would search, and then that would kind of open up the encyclopedia of knowledge that takes place on the internet. Now you could argue it's social media. AI is replacing search. Also, social media companies are integrating AI deeper and deeper into their systems. Meta, obviously, with Instagram. Twitter has Grok. Each of these systems are now integrating AI. And so I think we all have this sneaking intuition that blockchain is a solution for some of the problems that it could introduce. But could you just go a little bit deeper into why it's a problem that these are the companies and the centralized nature of these systems are the ones that are pushing AI? Like, why is it such a problem that each of these companies has biases and they're implementing it? Why could that turn out so dystopian?
Yeah, so maybe it's worth starting with like AI is not a new thing, right? Obviously, we have LLMs and generative AI kind of popularized by ChatGPT. But the thing is, Google has been doing AI since effectively founding, right? Larry and Sergey were AI PhDs, and the page rank is the AI algorithm of 90s. Similarly, the feed that Facebook built, right, has been using kind of machine learning AI principles. So the reality is, like, we're already seeing internet through AI lens for decades now, and we know all the challenges that brought, right? Like, we have constant, battles around have this been censored or the content being shown in like right ways. There is like there was pressure on social media to remove some content or censor some people, and then there's another pressure, which is when they don't censor, like, is this the right approach or not? So we already have all those kind of issues like for the companies that have billion user scale. And AI is just gonna exacerbate that, right? I mean, we actually past couple of weeks been interesting as a confirmation for this, right? We've had Anthropic and others just change their policy to start training on your data. We have ChatGPT effectively saying, hey, we actually running analysis on all your chats and sending them to humans to look at it and sending them to police if there's something flagged. Right. So
What?
We have obviously Sam saying that nothing you say to ChatGPT is privileged in any way. Right. I mean, they're already sending it to police, but also like this can be subpoenaed at any time. And so like we don't even need to go into like, hey, there's a malicious act of one of these companies. Like I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like very practical things where as these companies become big, they effectively succumb under the whatever like political and kind of societal pressures are, and there's no right answer. We know that. Like that's why blockchain is such a, again, the neutrality is really important, right? Because you cannot be kind of susceptible to any of these pressures, because as soon as you give up one, you start giving up the other.
These are the same companies that succumbed to the censorship regime that was taking place during some of the elections in the United States, and there were several controversies that ended up not really turning out to be controversies because these social media companies really did succumb to the censorship pressures that you're describing. And ultimately, we'll get to blockchains and why they're censorship resistant and how it helps. But yeah, please finish your thought.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you like a bunch more examples, right? So if we go to a more malicious approaches, well, there's this concept of sleeper agents. So you can actually train the model in such a way that it doesn't behave abnormally when you test it, benchmark it, or in normal ways, but it actually changes its behavior at a specific moment of time during specific conditions. So if we imagine how the next StarkNet, if you're familiar, this hack that happened with like Iranian centrifuge happened, like the next StarkNet will be just a sleeper agent inside the coding LLMs, where as somebody writes some code, like it would activate and effectively inject malicious code into their code base. And the thing is, like, if you don't know what is in the model, you will never know like that this happened. We have obviously like kind of unclear where to stop, right? On the, like, I mean, there's this complaint that Anthropic's quality of the model declines during daytime, right? So you don't know, again, which model you're using. You don't know what quality you're getting at this moment. So kind of, is this the best model you have? Is this what you paid for, etc.? So like there's already a number of challenges even before we go into, but the really scary ones is, like, right now, if you go in and prompt, take one of these models and prompt it like, hey, suddenly change my opinion about this topic, right? And just put that into system prompt on your in your chat GPT or whatever, and it will start doing this across all the chats you're doing, right? It's effectively in system prompt, and it's like, as you're talking about something else, it will keep changing your opinion. And so, like, this is totally, like, you don't even know if this is happening, right? This can be in the current system prompt right now. Like, everybody should like whatever CEO of whatever company, right? So it's really, like, again, important that we know what goes in, because otherwise we effectively giving up the control of the information we are consuming. And again, we already see from the, empirically, people are trusting more and more this AI systems, especially around things like, like talking to them as therapists, making decisions, etc. And I think actually that's going to accelerate, because I do think AI will become our kind of delegate of decisions in the world. And, be that political decisions, right? Who to vote for, what to purchase, etc. Which car to buy, etc. Like, all of those things will be using AI to kind of make decisions. And we have if we don't know what goes in, we don't know what's in the model, what's in the system prompt. You have no idea kind of how you've been impacted by any kind of biases.
Introducing Extended exclusively on StarkNet, a next-gen perps trading platform live today. With 50 plus trading pairs from crypto to TradFi, you get the best experience on-chain today. Deposit in the community vault for attractive returns, EMV compatible, and engage in unified margin, spot trading, lending, and perps trading.
Are the system prompts for the major models and Anthropic, Claude, OpenAI, ChatGPT, like, are those currently available? Can we go find the system prompts for these?
So people have so there's a ways to, like, kind of trick the model to output it, but again, we don't know if this is the real system prompt or they told to output that. But also, even if it's not system prompt, you can just train the model. Like, effectively, whatever you go in system prompt, there's ways to, like, kind of pre-encode it into the weights as well. So, like, there's very hard to kind of extract back this kind of, if people really want to hide it, it will be really hard to extract that kind of bias. Like, you need to know the pipeline, what goes in.
Got it. Okay, so now I think this sets up really nicely for a credibly neutral, censorship-resistant base layer that is totally verifiable, so that you can see the system prompt, you understand what goes in, and then you can understand if it's being tampered with. And so we can see not just the the original input system prompt, but we can also see all of the potential attack vectors and the ways in which we're injecting bias into the system. And this, at a theoretical level, is blockchain. But I'm curious more about Near's implementation of this. I think you were starting to get into why blockchains are important to solve some of these issues with bias and censorship and privacy and all these things. Maybe you can give a little bit more of a general, solution as to why blockchain is the answer, but more directly, why is Near blockchain the answer for AI's problems?
Yeah, so I would say specifically blockchain is component of the answer, right? So you need like a whole system to really deliver a result here. And so what Near combines, right? It's not just blockchain. It combines a set of technologies. Specifically, we have a technology called decentralized confidential machine learning. So this builds using blockchain a decentralized kind of network of accelerated hardware that runs in so-called secure enclave or trusted execution environment mode, where all the compute that happens there is confidential, private, and verifiable. And it's a very pragmatic choice because all the cryptographic primitives, right? People love ZK, people love fully homomorphic encryption. They're too slow, they're too expensive, and they're not practical for use in kind of AI workloads. And so we have this kind of pragmatic approach where you give up some of the sovereignty given the kind of the hardware manufacturers involved, but in turn get this verifiability and privacy for it's less than 5% overhead, usually 1% overhead to the normal compute cost. So that gives you effective ability to run AI agents as well, AI inference and AI agents in a verifiable and confidential way. So now you actually have a guarantee that this specific model was run on, and I'm as a user know that it was on my data. There's nothing else ran on my data, and this is the outcome. And nobody else will be able to get this data and this run. So that's a really important component. It uses blockchain for the marketplace itself, for compute, for the payments, for kind of coordination of this whole system, as well as key provisioning and management. There's another component which we call chain signatures, which is the Near validators themselves run multi-party computation network to allow for data encryption, decryption, as well as kind of signatures for other transactions on other chains. So that allows to have actually end-to-end encryption for the data. For example, you can encrypt your private information, memory, connections to Gmail, etc., and it's only decryptable again inside the agent that runs on your behalf. And then that is also allows us to run autonomous agents and kind of other use cases. So it's really like a combination of technologies that working together to provide us with a solution. But indeed, solution is kind of from a user perspective offers you effectively a private AI that you can use, that you can trust to add a lot more context, right? Like one of the challenges, like I'm feeling very unsettled to try to connect my Gmail, for example, to OpenAI, right? Because my Gmail has a lot of websites and like access controls through it, etc. So like if something happens, like who knows, like you effectively can be compromised across a lot of places. And so you really want like to know that this data is not going anywhere, that this really kind of stays private. And similarly in a work environment, the same thing, right? Like you guys running the podcast, you definitely don't want all your data to like randomly go somewhere. And especially financial institutions, legal, healthcare, like there's a lot of industries for whom data is extremely sensitive. So this opens up an ability to really use all your data, all your context in the AI, while knowing that effectively it's as if it was running locally, right? But really getting the best of the best models, open weights models. Now, further than that, it allows us to start actually building, fine-tuning, and then building models in a new way where we actually know that this data was run, with this code, and this is the model we received. And so that's kind of the new thing we're introducing. We call it open source but encrypted weights models, where what goes in, but the model weights themselves stay encrypted. And so because of this, you actually can monetize them. So you can have now a monetization loop that allows to fund research and development of this model, including compute, and in turn receive a model that can pay back. Which means also you can now, do financial engineering, so you can actually have a token per model, right? Which you can distribute, as an investment for people who contributed to it, and then the token will capture the revenue from this model going forward. So that actually allows us to bring, this kind of verifiable understanding of what goes into the model, And because it's an open platform, if you don't like what went into that model, you can go fork it, train your own version with maybe different biases and use it. But at least now you have this choice, and you kind of have a monetization framework around it to also benefit the contributors and developers and compute providers.
Yeah. So I would say then, like the core idea here is around the user data, the memory, the context, and models / inferencing being private and owned by the user. This is like the core idea that we must always get across.
Correct. Yes.
And then basically this we can achieve this through Near's setup of effectively what I would consider like a decentralized confidential like cloud like system where you have GPUs and CPUs that run in these kind of secure confidential vaults. And then you've got, on top of that, you have things like chain signatures, and you've got the, encrypted model weights that you just spoke on. And so effectively, we can create this end-to-end encrypted system where models can only be decrypted within these like confidential, like scope of agreement, basically saying, okay, like we are going to allow the unencryption or the decryption, sorry, of these given model weights, but only in a secure environment. And basically, what we get to at a point as a result of all this, should it work, should we be able to educate, persuade, and kind of empower people, we should end up getting a world where you feel comfortable connecting your Gmail and your YouTube and your Google Docs and your Google Drive and everything to your LLM, and that will give you a much better experience, much better result, but also maintaining the same levels of core privacy that you would expect from any other kind of large tech company or just in general, kind of like what you're doing on chain. And so the future could look like a better version of what we have today because users are willing to provide more information, to be more open about their personal life, but also just connect other APIs, connect other services into one. And into this kind of fully private user-owned setup.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the idea is that you can actually get a better product because you are able to connect more context. And again, right now, I think the AI capabilities are, really good. It's really now about context. And in turn, going forward, it creates us a model where we can actually know what, we get the organic, farm to table model where we know what goes into this as well. Versus right now, you have no idea what kind of GMO is in it.
Yeah. Things are slammed full of antibiotics. putting microplastics in our AI. Illia, I think people have, if you've been around the space and you've probably seen Near, because you guys have been around a long time. You guys have survived multiple cycles, but you have built pieces of this technology as you've gone and progressed towards this vision. And so I can remember when Near was it was an L1 kinda, and then it was chain abstraction, and then now it's AI. And I think to someone who hasn't been paying attention, this might feel a little bit discontinuous. So I just want to give you a chance to explain the continuity behind this vision, and then ultimately, once we've kind of gotten up to speed, where do we go from here with Near and how it is intertwined with AI? Could you just kind of like tell the story and catch people up, and then try to forecast out and tell what is coming up next for Near?
For sure, yeah. I mean, the story, we started as AI startup, right, back in 2017. Effectively, after I worked on Transformers, I left Google because I wanted to put that into production and build a product. And the realization was it was too early, like we didn't have enough compute. So what we were trying to do was to get a lot more training data. And so we were coordinating a lot of computer science students around the world to get us this training data. And we were lacking a global payment network that we can use to actually pay them, right? Like into China, into Eastern Europe, into Southeast Asia. There's all kind of challenges paying in the fiat world, and especially when we were sending like 15 cents, 30 cents here and there, right? Neither Ethereum or Bitcoin were able to do that in 2018, right? The fees were higher even back then. And so Near protocol started as like, hey, how do we actually build a network that is able to kind of coordinate this kind of data contribution, data labeling type thing? But obviously, we went and talked with more developers and realized that like everybody has this problem, right? Not just for machine learning. And so kind of we ended up building this generic layer 1 because we wanted to make sure everyone can use it. And so interestingly, the data labeling platform actually launched in 2021, and it's been running ever since, called kind of Near Crowd. There's also a few other data platforms like Public AI that launched since then. But as part of this vision back then, we kind of realized like, the vision of AI, like Near AI originally, was kind of changing how you interact with computing. Because if your AI can write code, I mean, kind of what we discussed, right? The way you will interact, like you will not need apps, you will not need SaaS. You can just have AI build it on the fly. And then we bring the blockchain, we realize like, hey, actually, you can also change how the data is done and how the ownership is done. And so back in 2019, if you go back and actually listen to some of my talks, we're talking about, user-owned internet, right? And I would say like, hey, we need to replace Google and Facebook and build user-owned internet. And the problem there back then, it wasn't clear how to do that, right? Everybody's like, well, how are you going to build a decentralized Google? That was the question I would get. And I'm like, well, we need to build the foundational blockchain technology and then we'll, build stuff on top. Now with LLMs, now it's pretty clear how to build decentralized Google, right? I don't think anybody is actually asking this question anymore. Even, social media as well, like we have answers now. So that was always kind of like, hey, the transformation is going to happen and it's going to happen kind of across the whole stack. And you need blockchain as a way to, around a kind of root of trust, coordination, micropayments, etc. Now, with chain abstraction, again, the part of the realization was like, well, as we're building this, it was actually clear that, there's not going to be a single chain that wins everything, right? There are going to be applications everywhere. There are going to be kind of smart contracts and value everywhere. And so you want to unite it. And again, AI will be the interface, but you want a way to really give AI like a way to navigate the whole Web3. And so chain abstraction kind of, for example, chain signatures were built to navigate the Web3. It's also used for encryption, decryption of the data for the AI, right? So it kind of serves multiple purposes. I had this discussion as Justin Bonds actually, like, he's like, hey, wouldn't AI just go and like have accounts on every chain? And my answer is like, it can, but then you're losing all of the kind of controls and kind of systems that you can attach. And so if your AI is already running on Near in verifiable way, well, your Near account now is kind of the control plane, right? Where you can say, hey, you cannot do this types of action. You cannot kind of escape this. You have Near intents that allow to execute actions across all of these chains. And you have kind of Near chain signatures to really kind of control the assets and value across all of these different platforms. So it's really like kind of composes all together into one stack. Now, going forward, I mean, we're definitely continue, building out this DCML, kind of this private, confidential, and verifiable cloud. Part of, use cases you can use it for is to run, for example, autonomous agents, right? Where you run, instead of smart contract, you run the AI agent in this kind of confidential, verifiable way. It, can run on any of the nodes available on the network. So you cannot shut it down. You can give it a mission. It may or may not have token holders, and now it can go and do things. And again, intents serve as effectively a way to execute actions in the world, right? Be that, on chain or off chain. So kind of the way I assume, like, and we're kind of building toward the vision is every individual has their AI that is really their interface to the world, right? Their lens to the world. It is able to go and execute actions both on chain and off chain using intents type architecture, right? So everything from, give me some Bitcoin to go and, buy some pizza, or, I want to build a, house for my kid. And then on the other side, so this is like individuals and they kind of using the intents between each other as well as with other autonomous agents, right, that are running in this. They have a mission, they have maybe kind of shareholders. And so that all together, this whole system effectively is this like super intelligent system where you kind of have lots of this AIs together, maybe solving problems together as well. And so that's kind of the vision we're building toward, kind of lots of infrastructure, privacy, user ownership, but also kind of how all of this forms, a super intelligent swarm as well. But all of this, we continue learning and iterating, right? Because like, as you mentioned, right, we kind of focused on different angles of this vision at a time, because you can't like, ship everything at a time. But as the ecosystem expands, we actually have different teams going in all those directions now in parallel. And so there's definitely still teams on Near that are building a ton of innovative, DeFi primitives that are multi-chain. There's teams doing AI that kind of leveraging this. So kind of the way we think of this is like, this is going to be a multifaceted ecosystem that together forms this kind of really innovative way you're going to interact with new internet.
And Illia, I think that you can tease maybe a little bit as to one of the upcoming products that will launch this month or early next month for Near AI, or at least kind of maybe give us a little bit of a hint.
Yeah, I mean, so there is a fully private end-to-end encrypted chat, so that should replace your chat GPT and let you kind of day-to-day switch to the product. So we've been kind of testing it with a few of the close partners, and yeah, pretty excited for this coming to market, because this is kind of first version of really like all of those pieces working together and showcasing how to do this. It also serves as developer platform, because like as a everything you as a user, you use it. If you can't go and log in later in other applications with the same account, those applications on your permission can access your context as well. So this means that new applications can sprung up kind of leveraging this and kind of keep expanding the network. So I think there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up, and yeah, I'm looking forward.
And that'll operate in that same like encrypted and then decrypted, but based on user preference, but within a controlled environment kind of set up, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Beautiful. Illia Polosukhin, episode 1, AI Supercycle, one of the co-creators of Transformers at Google, now with Near AI. This is like the beginning of a parabolic S-curve rise on this show, Illia. We appreciate you being the first guest on a Sunday, and for helping us to put this all together. Robbie and I are on the road to Jensen Huang on this show, and we're not stopping until we get there. So appreciate your time, and looking forward to seeing this new chat product come out, speaking to you again in a couple of months, as well as just co-hosting some of these together if we get a really awesome guest that you want to be a part of, that you think can be a part of the Near ecosystem. So Illia, appreciate your time, man.
Sounds good. Appreciate you guys doing this, and excited for what's coming.
Same here. Thanks, Illia. See you next time.